Construction workers on a Pilbara mining site are mourning the death of one of their colleagues who took his own life earlier this week. It's another tragic reminder of the spate of suicides of fly-in, fly-out workers that led to a West Australian parliamentary committee investigating the mental health effects of FIFO work conditions. Tomorrow the committee hands down its findings, but health professionals and families worry that with the mining slump, workers are even more reluctant to acknowledge mental health issues, fearing they'll lose their job. Bronwyn Herbert reports.
It's 5 a.m. at Perth Airport, peak hour for FIFO drop-offs. Hundreds of fly-in, fly-out resource workers are saying goodbye to loved ones in the dark.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Alliance Airlines is now boarding flight QQ 382 to the Granite.
They're off to work on remote mines and construction sites, often for weeks at a time. The attraction for most of these workers is the pay, but for some, the price is way too high.
The following passenger.
25-year-old concreter Rhys Connor was a FIFO worker for 2 years, spending 4 weeks away on site, then a week at home. It proved to be a dangerous combination.
Well, people do struggle up there, like with the depression, and at the moment I'm going through it. And you miss your family, and you pretty much share. So from that point of view, you're pretty much in a room every night or the week. Yep.
This interview was recorded just days before Rhys took his own life.
Yeah. And it can get you down sometimes.
Yeah, big time. So yeah, massively. So I'm still struggling, and until I get some help, I'll be on the right track again.
From a young age, Rhys loved horses, just like his dad.
And we used to work together, basically played together. He became a concreter like myself in our own business. He loved going to the races with us. He loved anything to do with the horses. Very, very happy young fella.
But Rhys became depressed after splitting with his fiancée, and he begged his father not to tell his boss.
He ultimately said, please don't discuss it with them, and he promised that he was going to get help down here when he came back to Perth, which he did. He actually tried to seek help. But he said, look, that he was just scared that the minute that he was reported, he would go into what they call the system, which is electronic monitoring of the employees or something like that. And so he was just scared that once he got reported in their system, he'd never ever get a job in mining again.
Nothing could prepare the Miller family for what happened next.
Anita in particular had felt funny, like she'd had a phone call from Rhys the previous day. He was, well, Mum, I'll see you tomorrow, Mum. I'm coming home, blah, blah, blah. No indication whatsoever of him being mentally ill. And then the next day because she used to be in constant contact with him, and she sort of didn't have a phone call that day, and she sort of thought that was strange. Anyway, the police came in and basically told us what had happened, and that Rhys had been discovered on site up in on the site, dead, and we had no. We asked even asked the police at the time, or where was his body, and they told us, he's probably still up in Newman at the time. So we basically we say, your son's dead. We're in total shock.
Rhys's suicide in his camp room in 2013 was one of 9 resource industry workers in the Pilbara who took their own lives in just a 12-month period.
Rhys took his own life in a donga. The company didn't even have an inquest or an investigation into his death, because they weren't required to, because he took his life in a donga.
At this stage, introduce myself, Graham Jacobs.
The spate of suicides prompted a West Australian parliamentary inquiry into FIFO mental health, and tomorrow the committee will hand down its findings.
I would like to see that there are some recommendations around how that's regulated and the duty of care and responsibility being put very much with employers too. I would love to see that the responsibility for FIFO workers when they're on the camps where they live, when they're away from home, also come under the same sort of responsibility and duty of care that they would should they have an accident, for example, actually on the mine site.
The national average is around about 20%. Of somebody suffering a mental health problem in any 1 year. However, we've found that FIFO workers in Western Australia are more likely to be around 30%.
Jennifer Bowers has been watching the inquiry closely. Her organisation led the most comprehensive study into the mental health impacts of FIFO work.
A lot of the work issues are obviously around some of the things that the inquiry have gone into in great depth around rosters, but it's also around pressure from management, obviously meeting performance targets, having to meet the timeline set by the producers.
Despite the downturn, there are still more than 55,000 resource workers in WA on fly-in, fly-out rosters. The mining industry maintains the FIFO lifestyle itself isn't to blame.
Mental health is a really complex issue, and it will be impacted upon multi and interacting factors, be that in, your work environment, your family situation, your financial status. So it would be unfair and inaccurate to point to one element of someone's life to exacerbate those mental health problems.
It would be so much better if we could be talking about the fact that we know this is an at-risk group simply because it's a male-dominated industry, and the demographic, there would be a huge percentage of the demographic would be male under 44. We also know risk factors living and working in remote and isolated areas. So that alone really has us, I think, take the view that we should all be doing something, including the resource sector, rather than trying to defend a position that it's no worse.
For Peter Miller, racetrack meets are much lonelier without his son by his side. But Reese is constantly in his thoughts, even naming this young racehorse after him.
He's called over the shoulder because Reese had a tendency to be affectionate, and he'd put his arm over people's shoulders, so basically that's why we called him over the shoulder. And with a bit of luck, you'll be looking over his shoulder at the opposition.
Bronwyn Herbert reporting, and people seeking support and information about suicide can contact Lifeline on 131114 or Beyond Blue on 1300 22 46 36.